In this video, we're going to be taking a look at the document Ofqual released, confirming what they're going to be changing about the GCSEs, AS levels and A levels in the coming 2020 and 2021 academic school year. So that's the one with the summer 2021 exams. Now, if you haven't seen the first video I did about this, which talks about individual subjects and how they've changed since the proposals, then I've linked it in the card that you'll find in the corner, and you'll definitely want to check that out because it includes some really important subjects such as English literature, which the majority of GCSE students take. So definitely check that out. For the second part though, what we're going to be looking at is the general decisions that Ofqual made and some of the responses that they got from the initial consultation, and why they decided to make the changes that they did in response to what people said. Now, if you haven't already, please make sure to subscribe, not just because it shows support for this channel, but also because it keeps you up to date with the latest information coming out on GCSEs, A-levels, university and beyond. And it's stuff that you really will find useful and will want to know for the times that are coming up, because they're going to be difficult. So let's jump in. So Ofqual start off by talking about fairness, and they basically acknowledge what many teachers and others have said about students who may have struggled to engage with work from home, students who may not have had access to computers or internet at home, or students who are vulnerable to COVID-19, or students who may have special educational needs, and the effect that not being in school would have had on these groups of students. And many of the students in these groups would not just have been disadvantaged during the lockdown, but they'll also continue to be disadvantaged during the coming academic year. So Ofqual said that they received suggestions on how this could be challenged, how this could be changed, so that the impact of the lockdown and everything wouldn't be so bad on them. And some of these included suggestions such as that teachers either in full or in part assist their students, or which in other words is that exams get cancelled. However, Ofqual said, and I quote, "None of these suggestions would allow for students' different experiences while maintaining a common standard for all." So, none of the suggestions, whether they included teacher assessment, which is the cancellation of exams, or not, seem to be to Ofqual's liking, in terms of fairness anyway. But by reading through the rest of this section, it simply appears that Ofqual have no idea what to do to keep things fair at the moment. And they're basically saying, we'll get back to you. So unfortunately, there's no good news when it comes to how things are going to be kept fair. Now, the next section was about volume of content. And this was all about respondents during the consultation saying that there is a whole lot of information to be learnt, and this is across all subjects, and not a lot of time to do it in. Now, there's this double-edged sword when it comes to this, especially when it comes to reducing the amount of content, the amount of information that students have to learn to pass the course. Because on the one hand, you have the fact that students who don't have to learn as much, therefore don't have to cram in as much information in such a small amount of time. Bearing in mind that we lost about 4-5 months of learning. And there's also the second factor where students may not be prepared for their subsequent courses because they're missing information and they're not required to know that information to pass their exam. Whereas in past years, they did have to know that information to pass their exam. And then there's also the third factor. And I've seen this expressed by many people who have commented on my videos or subscribed to my channel, where they've said that they've worked hard and independently to make sure that they were on top of their work while others didn't. So why should they essentially suffer? Why should they have to find out that all the work that they put in, a lot of it won't even be used or useful to them when they did nothing wrong? And there's an acknowledgement from Ofqual, and also I acknowledge this as well, that would be super frustrating for those students who try to stay on top of things. Frustrating and demotivating too. So you've got a bit of a double-edged sword there, where reducing content can be pretty damaging if we're not careful. So this leads us on to the section on optional content. Now, optional content in terms of allowing students to pick from a variety of questions which ones they're going to answer within the exam itself. Now, almost half of the respondents said that there should be more of these types of option questions, but only 37% said there shouldn't. But Ofqual said that research shows that putting in these sorts of optional questions makes lower performing students perform even worse, and they're the ones which need the help the most. And so they came to the conclusion that if exam boards want to increase the optional questions, then they can. But apart from the sampling content in history, ancient history, and English literature that we mentioned in the last video, they will not force exam boards to change anything else when it comes to how they structure or format their exams. Now, many students, and this includes my year 12 brother as well, asked why are there so few changes to the AS and A level subjects in comparison to their GCSE counterparts. Well, Ofqual answered this too. For AS, they said that it will be largely unaffected simply because students starting year 12 in September 2020 wouldn't have started the content anyway. And as for A level, they said that A level students are more independent, or they should be more independent workers, and so minimal adjustment to the content should be made. They also said that if they mess about too much with the content, then it might affect those students and their progression onto wherever they're going next, whether it be higher education, apprenticeships, or anywhere else which they seek to go. And I think that's an interesting argument. That's a fair argument, but I'd like to hear your views on that actually. Do you think that there should have been greater changes to the AS and A-level exams? Let me know in the comments down below. Now here's where things get interesting. This is the section on exam paper length and format. Now, Ofqual said that 74% of respondents said that exams shouldn't be any longer than they've been in the past. Now, that's in response to people suggesting that students should do less exams, but make them longer. Now, some of the 74% actually said that exams should be shorter with less content in them and possibly even more multiple choice questions. And 49%, almost half of the respondents, said that students should take less exams in 2021 in general. So we have the situation where a lot of people want exams either shrunk, to have different formats, or to be reduced in number. And Ofqual's answer to this is no. The way they put it is, we were not persuaded by the arguments. Now this makes me feel a bit like we've failed an English persuasive argument assignment, but either way, Ofqual says they don't require any changes of the exam boards, apart from those that they've already announced. That's ones like art, where they've removed the NEA and stuff like that. So no big changes to the actual length of exams or anything like that. They should be the same structure for the most part that they have been in the past. Okay, now here's the big one, the one that a lot of you are wondering about, and that is the exam timetable. And it was all about asking the question, will exams be later in summer 2021? Will it be later on in the year, giving you guys, you students and you teachers as well, more time to learn and teach that content, and also to revise, to prepare for those exams? Well, of course, still don't know. They gave the same concerns that they gave last time about the knock-on effect to results and marking and other stuff. And I've done a video on this where you can look at all the sorts of arguments that they gave for and against it. But Ofqual don't really know what they're doing when it comes to this, and have basically said that they'll let us know when they've made their decision. But for now, they're going to talk to some other organisations like higher education institutions, the Department for Education, and also some of their links within other countries such as Northern Ireland and Wales. So then that brings us to the end of this section of the document, and the end of the analysis of this document overall. Now hopefully this hasn't disappointed you all too much, even though, to be fair, it does sort of disappoint me. Ofqual's obsession with upholding a system that clearly serves specific groups is aggravating at best, but their refusal to think maybe their entire system needs a switch up and a reform, that's what really frustrates me. But hopefully being armed with some of these facts, some of this information, will arm you students and arm you teachers to have an idea of what's coming and prepare for it, because that's all we can do when stuff like this is out of our control. Now, there's going to be a lot more videos to come on the changes or the lack of changes to GCSEs and AES and A levels and education beyond that as well. So be sure to subscribe to this channel if you haven't already. Just another reminder for you. And that's all for today. Until next time.